Hello, all you beautiful and wonderful scorekeepers out there. It's Rocky at the top of the show. So, if you have been listening for the past couple of weeks, I think maybe it was like 2 episodes ago, we said we were going to be doing something a little bit different on our off weeks. And so we're a little bit late, or okay, I'm a little bit late. It's totally my fault. Life took another one of its unexpected little twists and turns. Uranus is in Gemini, but this time it was good. A nice group of people decided to give me full-time employment, so that's exciting. More on that soon, I'm sure. But schedules are just rearranging and getting used to the new normal. But here we are. Anyway, Rocky, why are we here? Why are you talking to us at the top of the show? Well, some of you may or may not be aware. Last year, we, for 12 episodes, for about 6 months, we did a show on a separate feed for Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts called Art Class. And we didn't do like an awesome job of letting people know that it was happening on a different feed. So many of you who may have wanted to hear it may not have gotten the chance to. And we really, really, really want to share it with all of you, our loyal listeners, because it's something that we are really, really proud of. We had some amazing conversations with some incredible artists, some of whom you may have heard of, like Big Frida, Bob the Drag Queen. We had a chat about James Baldwin with the amazing journalist Hilton Alls. And a lot of conversations with folks you may not have heard of yet, who were really smart and engaging and funny, and it was just a beautiful black time in the winter and spring of 2024. And we've talked about it a little bit, I think, in this new iteration of the score since we've been back home. And I think some people get the impression that perhaps the experience perhaps was a little bittersweet, and I think that's mostly just because it ended, and all good things have to come to an end. And when you work so hard on something and you're so proud of it, and it has to go away, that's not an awesome feeling. But it's all mitigated by the fact that we created something really cool, and we had some really just amazing experiences. So exciting. We got to do 2 live shows on stage at Lincoln Center. One of them was with Nona Hendrix. And if you don't know who Nona Hendrix is, you will find out, because we will be re-releasing all 12 episodes of Art Class on our off weeks when we're not doing the score. So we hope you'll tune in. There's just, like I said, it's chock full of really, really fun stuff. Some dated references, certainly. Apologies for that. Or who knows, maybe you want to relive, the last year of the Biden administration. I don't know. You do you. But it's gonna, and don't pay attention to any of the links, and Emilia's segment is woefully out of date at this point, but Emily is great, and you get to hear her voice. And she's a presence we miss on the show, and we'll hopefully have her back. But anyway, now I'm beginning to ramble. But so I'll stop, and I'll let you all actually listen to the show. This is our inaugural episode, where we were still sort of getting our feet underneath us in this new format. that we had created. But we fortunately were joined by the perfect guest to have for your inaugural episode: activist, writer, musician, just all around incredible thinker, hilarious, sweet and funny, and just all around just wonderful person, Junauda Petrus, who, since this episode aired, has been named the poet laureate of Minneapolis, which is crazy. So congratulations to her, and we hope to have her on the show again soon. But yeah, so for the next few months, in addition to scorekeepers, hopefully you will also become our classmates. And we hope you enjoyed the show. All right, here's the first episode of Art Class. Goodness gracious, everyone, it's time. Are you ready? Is everyone ready?
For
the first episode of Art Class. It's here. Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, that little thing. Yes.
Can you believe it? This is crazy. I cannot believe it. We are recording an episode of our new podcast for Lincoln Center. It's so exciting, everyone. Welcome. This is Art Class. My name is Rocky Jones. I am here with my two amazing co-hosts, Bynum, Paige Reynolds. How are the two of you today?
Fabulous. Excited for class. My notebook is out. My pen is ready. Pencils are sharpened.
And Leah, are you ready for class?
Same.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, this is Lincoln Center's brand new podcast, all about the arts and arts education. And we could not be more excited to be here and to bring you all the news that you can use with about art and artists that are sitting at the intersection of beauty and innovation, and all of the amazing things that are happening out there in arts education, because it is so important to remember that arts and arts education are and always have been and always will be at the center of American life.
Mm-hmm.
And what better place than Lincoln Center to have that conversation? Am I right?
Absolutely.
So you all are probably wondering who we are.
That's funny because we're wondering who they are.
Right.
And some of you might remember us from a little show that we did back in the day when we all worked together at Minnesota Opera called The Score. If you're not familiar, go ahead on and check it out. It's cute. But the Score was taking a look at opera and classical music through the lens of three Black queer opera administrators, arts administrators, and really looking at the industry through an anti-racist and anti-oppressive lens. And so art class is really all about sort of expanding that view, looking at what's happening in the arts today and how we can make the arts industry a much more inclusive and equitable space, especially for people who look and love like us. But of course, everyone is invited to the conversation, needless to say. But I think we should probably introduce ourselves and let people get to know us, instead of me just sort of lecturing. Although I guess this is our class. So. So that would make sense. But Paige, let the people know all about you. I want to know all about you.
So I was born in, no, I'm not gonna start there, but I am from Detroit. I met these wonderful folks and the many other places I have lived after that. I'm currently speaking from New Orleans, and I am an artist. I am an organizer. I am a birth worker. I am your weird cousin who does tarot cards and astrology and all of that. I'm that one. And a lover of the arts in all kinds of ways, arts and culture. And I am really excited about how we get to just bring more of our full selves to this podcast, to art class, Minnesota Opera, where we all met, we first all intersected. The score was an awesome thing that I'm proud of. And
it was
we
your
were
idea.
and yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying.
That little fact.
That
It
little
was, yeah, it was my idea. But we were talking about classical music. Of course, we were at an opera company. That was the lane. But we are all so expansive and have so many interests and are culture nerds we're all culture nerds, and it's kind of cute how it's all in our own way too. So I'm excited to bring all of that to the show. Yeah.
And
how about you, Lee? Tell the people who you are.
Well, let's see. Lee Bynum, 24, Aquarian.
24 what?
Touche. Aquarian, New Yorker, artist of different kinds, and repository for absolutely useless information and lots of very useless information. But that's part of what makes me excited about the opportunity to do this show. The score was really fantastic. We got to talk to kind of everybody who I ever wanted to talk to in classical music. We really got to hit every single topic, and it was incredibly satisfying and interesting and challenging, and one or two times a little scary. And it kind of left me feeling like, what about all the other parts of the arts that we're not getting to talk about that are absolutely being touched by a lot of these same things, casting and colorism and challenges with repertoire and confusions about where the audience is and why an audience isn't coming despite, apparent requests for us to show up. These are things that aren't just about opera, aren't just about classical music. This is about how art is made and produced in a country that is not reckoned with its own demographics yet. And that's the thing that I think about a whole lot. So yeah, super excited to be here and, share a little bit about my life and my work, probably a lot about my cat, since she is the unofficial fourth co-host of the show, and probably also some free singing from my husband, who frequently will be singing in the background. And if I ever get a decent mic, it will be picked up somewhere on these recordings. So yeah, that is Lee in a nutshell. What about you, Rocky? Who are you?
Well, before we get to me, I think it's also important that we mention that you are also the chief education officer at Lincoln Center.
Just that little
That's
fact.
important. That's important to mention.
That's how I got this gig on the show, because I knew somebody somewhere.
You had some friends in high places. Me, oh gosh, I'm so boring. No, I'm not.
No, really
my name's Rocky Jones, he, him. I'm an artist in a number of different disciplines, husband, father to the most beautiful kitty in all the land, Sagittarian, avid homosexual, holding it down for the cis community on this podcast, at least. And yeah, I think my day job is I'm the only one of the three of us who is still currently at Minnesota Opera full time, and I'm the director of equity, diversity, and inclusion there, and all of us in the EDI space are right now just a little but a big part of my job is making sure that especially when it comes to the arts, we are creating, as I mentioned earlier, much more accessible and equitable and inclusive spaces. And so that's what I'm really interested and excited about. The thing that I always really loved about the score is when people would come up to me and be like, I got into this, or I checked this out because I listened to the show and I heard three people who were like me, who found this really what I thought was like super esoteric and weird and not for me, whether it was a piece of music we were talking about or a particular artist we were interviewing, and that became an entry point for someone to discover something new and to really expand their horizons. And so that's what I really hope to do with this show. I think the idea is not like, it's called art class, but like we're not the professors. We are we are your classmates. You are our classmates, and we're all in this and we're all learning together. So, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I took some time off, certainly, from the arts to pursue things, to pursue other interests of mine for a really long time, for most of the O's and teens. So I'm catching up and I'm learning about a lot of new things as well, right along with everybody else. So, I'll be the one who's sort of asking the basic questions and when you say X, Y, and Z, what does that mean? So, if you're worried that this is going to be, a little, not in your wheelhouse, there's absolutely an entry point. The arts is for everyone. And we really want to be here and open this space up so that, I don't know, not to sound maudlin, but the arts really changed my life, saved my life in a number of different ways, and low periods in my life, and have given me so much joy and helped me learn and understand who I am. And so obviously I think that it could work for everyone. And so yeah, I'm just super excited that we have this platform to share the art that we all love and that we're all super interested in, and hopefully put some people on. So yeah. That's me in a nutshell. Oh, and I'm a Sagittarius. Did I mention that?
You actually did, but it
I
is
did. Okay.
another Sagittarian. I know it's very Sagittarian to make sure we know it and to say
Yes,
it again.
yes, yes.
So yeah.
And I'm a Gemini rising, so I talk too much. Well, we have a jam-packed show for you today.
Don't we?
Oh my goodness, we have so many things for you today. Our good friend Emilia Mettenbrink coming through with some of the exciting things that are happening in the arts world that you all can check out. We've got Lee's Career Day interview. I'm gonna talk to someone in the arts about their job, perhaps, someone that, doesn't normally get a bit of shine. And we have an incredible interview coming up with I don't even have words for how excited I am about this interview with author, activist, multidisciplinary artist, Junauda Petrus. She was just incredible, and she's on to talk about her work, her books, specifically The Stars and the Blackness Between Them, which was actually on a banned book list a couple of years ago.
Multiple.
banned
list.
book list.
Yes,
Yes, yes, yes. And,
it was that good.
it was that good.
Right.
And of
They,
course, a huge part of our show is talking about arts education. And I think, a discussion about book banning makes perfect sense, unfortunately. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
yeah, when you were talking about, the lens that you bring to the show, I think one of the ones that I'm most interested in and that I often turn to is just the arts, people's response to the arts, different types of arts, in this case, literary arts, and like what
Hmm.
that's saying about our time.
Hmm.
And also this kind of like dissonance between what is like valued and beautiful among the people versus, powers that be, and
Hmm.
what's targeted by them and why. And that's something that I really look forward to. I mean, I look forward to everyone hearing with Junauda
Mhm.
and the brilliant things she has to say. But I think over the course of the show overall, like when we're talking about the narratives that aren't uplifted, also like why
Hmm.
is that? Why have some of these things or some of this work, some of these people tried, why has the attempted erasure happened? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a thing I think you'll hear from us quite a bit over the season if we're doing our job in art class. And I think, I come to class to think. I come to class to think and to learn things. So,
And unfortunately, I have a feeling that the world is going to give us a lot to talk about relative to some of that
oh yeah.
this season of the show, this semester
Oh, yes.
of the show.
Like Tyra didn't call them seasons, she called them cycles. We call them semesters.
Semesters. Absolutely. And one of the things that, like, I feel like we've been sort of talking around the last couple of years has been the consequences, continued consequences of everything that came after the murder of George Floyd and that whole inflection point. And obviously, the very complicated set of realities in which we exist today came about after hundreds of years of deliberately and intentionally constructed systems that have meant power resides in certain places and not in others, and all of the consequences of that. And the arts are frequently sort of wrapped in that. And this intersection between the arts and school and people's will is a very interesting one to me. And if we think about like the history of why schools were created in this country in the first place, public schools, a lot of times people say it was to teach people how to read the Bible. It was actually to teach people what it meant to be an American citizen as defined by whomever was in control at that particular moment. And being able to mandate what is and is not read is a very real part of how people not only define what your school experience is, but just what it means to be participating in the American polity, right?
Mhm.
And we are looking at something that in the last couple of years, there's been this real uptick since 2021 in book bannings, right? And we haven't seen anything like it since the 40s. And generally, there are these things that are called cycles of outrage, which happen about every 20 years or so, where the sort of mainstream gets really animated around the idea that young people are becoming interested in some new piece of technology or some new thing that runs counter to how they understand kids to engage with the world, right? And they seek to ban things, and sometimes it's been books or rock and roll or pinball or video games or comic books, but it's often books, right? Because
Mhm.
ideas
Yep.
can be so threatening to people's ability to control, right? And to maintain power. So where we really started to see it around 2021 was around race identity, right? Identity is always very uncomfortable, and things about race in this country have consistently been over policed, right? Anything having to do with race is going to be over policed here. and then secondarily around gender and sexuality. Again, nothing new. If you look at the cycles of what is banned, this frequently comes up. So like comic books were banned in the late 40s, and there were a lot of concerns about whether or not Batman and Robin living together in their cute little cave was going to turn kids all over the country queer. Like, and this is like stuff you can look up.
Is that
Congress
for real?
Wow, wait.
Wait,
Very-
that's for real?
Very for real. Congress investigated it. Actually, the first time Congress was on television was in April of 1954, and they were investigating comic books and their effect on delinquency, and had
Wow.
numerous experts testifying as to whether or not comics actually were making kids delinquents, turning kids queer, making nice white kids behave more like inner city Black kids, a thing you've never heard before, right? Like these kinds of things were coming up then, and this most recent round of books that have been banned, it closely mirrors that. As a matter of fact, this comic book thing was interesting because they actually would collect and then burn comic books on school grounds in the 40s and early 50s. So like these kind of like fascistic ways of controlling how people, especially young people, access art is not new, even a little bit. And the kinds of things that were getting banned, conceptually paralleled the stuff that's getting banned now, in addition to our guest, Junauda Petrus, folks like Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, their work is banned because they are talking about race and gender and sexuality in ways that are deeply discordant with how people want to control how those roles come to be and what people think they can be, right? So there's a lot here, and to be sure, it's not just books, but the book thing. I don't know how we can profess to have the First Amendment be our First Amendment and then at the same time say, but I'm going to control what speech and which ideas you even get to know exist, right? It's a little wild.
It is truly wild, especially when I think about how much books changed my life as a youngin', and and that's why I feel, books changed my life, introduced me to so much that was not being talked about at all, or just had missing perspectives and holes in the narrative when I was young. So it's part of why I'm really excited to talk with Junauda and for y'all to hear her, because she's also specifically speaking to young people and writing towards them in her work. Which we'll hear a lot about, a lot of her, a lot of all of us reflecting on how our younger selves felt seen and acknowledged. Yeah.
Well, I say, why wait?
Why wait? We've been teasing all long enough.
I'm just saying. I'm still stuck on Batman and Robin, but while I ruminate on that, y'all go ahead and enjoy this conversation that we had with Junauda Petrus, and we will be right back.
Right, everybody, welcome back to Art Class. Class is back in session, and we are here for a fabulous conversation with the brilliant, beautiful, talented, magical, my friend, Junauda Petrus.
Yay!
Junauda Petrus, yay, welcome.
Welcome.
I will read a short bio for her, and then we'll get into it. Junauda Petrus is a creative activist, writer, playwright, and multi-dimensional performance artist who was born on Dakota land, West Indian descended, and African sourced. Her work centers around Black wildness, futurism, ancestral healing, sweetness, speckle, and shimmer. She is the author of The Stars and the Blackness Between Them, winner of the 2020 Coretta Scott King Honor Book Award. Welcome.
I should add to my bio that I also have a kids book out now called Can We Please Give the Police Department to the Grandmothers?
Which I love that
And
title so much.
yeah, and then is there something else that I would add? Oh, I also say that I'm a runaway witch and a cosmic bag lady and a soul sweetener. So those are kind of my like official titles, as they say.
All of
Titles.
that and so much more. A master storyteller. And speaking of stories, the stars and the blackness between them, we are all fresh after, off of checking it out. Well, I've checked it out a while ago, but my co-host here,
Aw.
I know we all have our reasons why it's important to us. So many identities that we all share in this room, being Black, being queer. But I would love to know specifically from you, like why you found it important to write this book. Why'd you have to get this out there?
Mm, that's a good question. Like, why? Because I feel like so many times with artwork, it like, or art practices or art offerings, like it finds you, it conjures you, and pulls you into itself. So I feel like sometimes when I have to sort of orient myself in relationship to my artwork or my books. It's kind of like, oh, they like really came to me and were like, girl, I need to tell you about me. And so, yeah, so in 2015, like I was doing a lot of kind of performance art that lived in like circus and puppet and mask spaces and all like living within Black storytelling and Black stories and queer stories and family stories and hood stories. And then, this book idea or story idea came to me and really, yeah, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I just started writing it. But it just showed up as this little seed, like a Black life, like two Black lives that were dealing with life threatening experiences. So one is the prison industrial complex, one is a literal, like life threatening illness, and how we will look at the value and the worth of Black life differently depending on all kinds of things, right? Like, part of that inspiration came from seeing when a young Black person or a Black person of any age, rather, once they were murdered in police custody, they automatically went on trial. It'd be like, well, what was that kid doing beforehand? Or what do we know about them? Like, did they do anything? And it's like, wait a minute, what about who shot them? What about who was like supposed to be protecting them? So, but like, we could have value for Black life in other ways where it's like, oh my gosh, this person is sick, or this person is a superhero, or this person is sexy, or I don't know, an athlete. So yeah, I think with kind of being I was really thinking about Black existentiality, Black ancestralness, Black sort of cosmologies, and Black queer sexiness and love and like young love and kind of that sort of he like that first kind of like, oh my gosh, this person
Yeah.
type of love, which I really wanted to see Black queerness in. Like I was so rare. I didn't really see it. So I think like a lot of young adult writers were writing books that felt very much like the ones we needed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.
Mhm. I do feel like my young self needed this book.
Absolutely.
Very much.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like anybody who knows me well knows that I have been therapized within an inch of my life. One of the tools that my therapist gave me very, very early on in our work together was to think about, in those moments when I'm not feeling worthy enough or I'm not feeling, like my body looks the way it should or whatever it is, that I go back to the time when I received that message as a child and I just hold that version of myself and I love on that
Mhm.
version of myself. And reading this book really felt like that. It really felt like
Mhm.
an expression of love to an earlier version of myself that really needed that at the time, that felt very sort of confused and excited and a little fearful. But ultimately just needed that love and that space to be like, you're okay and you're loved. So, I mean, thank you for that.
Mm.
And Junauda, could we talk a little bit about the response that the book has received in the couple of years since it's come out? Because I really found it fascinating and troubling in some ways, some of the more negative responses to what is so clearly a story about love, sort of fundamentally. In 2021, after Texas legislator Matt Krause, who was running for Attorney General of the state at the time, included your work on the list of about 850 titles that needed to be investigated because they made students, quote, feel discomfort, as if education is not about just that thing sometimes. Kel Surprise, maybe 849 of the books on that list were about race and or sexuality. And in response, you said, I mean, schools promote white supremacists and call them our forefathers, people who enslaved Black people and who made wealth that generations are still living off of. And that's included in school, not in truthful ways. When I went to school, I had to read and learn about so many things that took me away from my truth and my beauty and the history of my ancestors. I was told things about Black women that were harmful and incomplete. And kind of reading your novel, it was part of what was so beautiful about it, as everyone has just said, is that these are things that many of us live, but we almost never get to read about, right? So could you say a little bit about how the work might move towards creating a more complete story?
Yeah, that's what I love about writing novels. It's like I get to sort of play and hang out and learn about all these different spirits. You know, my mentor, Alexis Duval, she calls like character spirits. So I'm like, yeah, these spirits. And I think a lot of what makes it acceptable in our society's eyes to oppress, to other, to destroy, to genocide people is once we're like, okay, those people are different, they're somehow less than, they're somehow problematic. And if those people were gone, or at least if they were oppressed, you know, and we were on top, then it's acceptable, right? So I feel like that's part of what these legislators are trying to do. If like you don't get to know that, like for example, in my book, that there's queerness everywhere in the world, you know, there's so many sweet, beautiful relationships that can be had, you know, in consensual ways and soulful ways that are queer, that, you know, even like my friends or people I know who are, you know, quote unquote straight. I don't know why I say that, but I say this, quote unquote straight. Are, you know, also talking about how this book offered them an invitation to sensuality, you know, to having a very sensual, you know, sort of exploration with romance and with pleasure. So anyway, so when you were reading that quote and they were like, you know, they don't want kids to feel uncomfortable. And I was like, what, you mean give them little tingly feelings? Like little tingly sort of like, well, what does that mean? What does it mean when my tummy feels that way? Oh, this character Mabel is feeling this way with this girl. And, you know, she has all these reflections. And it's not so much about gender as much as it is about desire and pleasure. And, you know, like, Audre Lorde, who happens to be on my shirt, talks about, you know, and the uses of the erotic is that when you are connected to your desire, you are just, you know, positioning yourself in a way that you can't be forced into oppression or a half-life. It becomes the thing that guides you. And so, yeah, I think that in addition to them saying it's about race and about sexuality, it's also about this, you know, kind of divine desire to live in a world that is more expansive and loving and nourishing and respectful and collective and all of these things that, in addition to being, you know, homophobic and anti-Black and racist, these people don't want us to know our true roots, our ancestry, our indigeneity, you know, even as stolen Black people. You know, we come from indigeneity, you know, on the continent, not these people who are like, oh, I'm Cherokee and Blackfoot. I don't know about y'all. But there's also us as people of African descent who are like, oh, yeah, when you go to Africa, which, you know, my wife is Cameroonian, you know, we just came back from Zanzibar in Tanzania, and seeing how people who are from their ancestral land, how they are in relationship with their land, and also how those lands are being extracted from and, you know, are still living within colonial, imperial, settlerism oppression, you know, where it's like all the rich white folks from Europe get to come and, you know, have the bomb time while everybody else is like, you know, living. So anyways, back to these people trying to ban my book. It's like, you know, if you read in my book, you're going to be sipping on some truth. If you read in my book, you're going to be feeling some feelings. And so, like, you know, if you ain't read my book, keep my book's name out your mouth. So there's that. And I also think that it just tickles me that, you know, these folks are so scared, and they should be scared, because there's something that like is on its way out in regards to the ways that they've been in position and power, because people don't want to live in that flat, raggedy, dry, ashy reality. No more. No more, master. No more.
May I ask a quick follow-up about that? Because I love where you're going with this, because I often wonder, like, why, right? Like, why in their heads? Like I can always sort of follow the actual rationale. And when I picked up the book, I knew the broader context around the bannings. So like I read it understanding that people had some kind of problem when I read it. So I read every single page, even the acknowledgments. And I never read the acknowledgments because I feel like they're always not always my business, right? Everything that you wrote was so beautifully poetic. Were you surprised that people had this reaction to a story about two people just loving each other?
I mean, I think I was surprised, actually. I mean, I think once I saw the other books that were banned, you know, I was like, oh, y'all be banning some bad bitches. You know, like y'all really be banning some bad. So I felt flattered, low key. You know what I'm saying? I felt flattered. But then it also was like, I think also too, it's like, you know, who thought Donald Trump would ever be president? Like, there's some things that you kind of have to be like, okay, let me not be so ha he about some stuff that like it comes and slaps me upside the head and in the face, you know? So I think there is a part of me that's like, oh, like my homegirl was like, girl, I didn't know your book was banned. Oh, they messing with your coin, you know? And I was like, oh, I guess I didn't think about that, you know? And I don't know how that looks like or what have you. I feel like there's some people who, you know, obviously their books have still been amazing, even if their books have been banned, you know, like Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, James Baldwin, you know, all of these greats. And then also other people like Kiese Layman and, you know, folks whose work I really love. So, yeah, so I think I was surprised, and also being like, wow, you know, let me not underestimate, you know, what it means, you know, besides the, like, you know, the way it impacts my career, you know, what, like, for example, I was on book tour with my kids' book and I was in Miami, which, you know, obviously is in the state of Florida. And I met, you know, a math teacher who had to put all of the queer books, a queer math teacher, all of her queer books into a little cabinet that's like off to the side that she closes the door, but kind of leaves it open a crack, because she can't have the queer books out, but she has them available, you know? But if she were to be found out, she could lose her job. I met two people there who, you know, in that time frame had lost their gender affirming healthcare. So that there's ways that, you know, these laws and these ways of othering and positioning power and privilege, you know, people are very serious about maintaining it, you know, and part of it is these, you know, knowledge wars and getting people to be afraid and to be idiots. Anyway, so yeah, so just back to that. Like, yeah, being in Florida, I was like, okay, it's very tangible because I also met with teens, like LGBTQ teens and like BIPOC teens who are like doing leadership development with a couple of youth organizations whose names I don't remember right now. But like talking to like young trans kids and queer kids who are growing up in Florida right now. And yeah, they're in Miami, which is like so queer, so Caribbean, so BIPOC, but also is adjacent to a lot of these restrictive, conservative, backwards laws and, ways of thinking. So,
yeah. It just makes me so sad when I think about it. But it gives me hope when I think about artists such as yourself who are creating spaces that these conversations can happen. And so you mentioned some bad bitches earlier. And I'm curious, especially given your Caribbean West Indian heritage, you've got a couple of bad bitch Caribbean West Indians here on the call. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about sort of your heritage, your ancestry, and how that has influenced your work as well.
Yeah. So yes, my mother's Trinidadian and my father's Crucian from St. Croix, um, and I'm Black American. I was born in Minneapolis. And there's a lot of ways that, like, growing up, I didn't really track that my parents were immigrants. Just we were all Black, we was all in the hood. And I was teased because I acted like an Oreo, which I was like, okay. I think it's just because my accent was different. Because everybody in Minneapolis who's Black, a lot of people are from Chicago, they're from Milwaukee, they're from like that Southern migration through the Midwest. And I was like the random West Indian, So, yeah, I think for me, my parents felt like their own just from their own, countries that, I mean, they literally were, but it was like their existence felt so foreign in that I was born in Minneapolis, Midwest, and one of the coldest, snowiest places, and they're from the islands, surrounded in water. And I'm in the Midwest surrounded by earth, plains, cornfields, and Minneapolis is the land of 10,000 lakes, but that ain't no ocean. Mm-mm. And so I feel like there's a lot of ways that my parents, kind of origin being in places that are surrounded by water that feel very much like their own sort of universes, but very small places. My dad, St. Croix is pretty small. Trinidad is like pretty cosmopolitan in a lot of ways. And, there's parts of it that's very country and rural, but, Port of Spain, Laventil, where my mom is from, is like the hood, is like, real, concrete jungle. So yeah, I feel like they also are of the Windrush generation, which I just learned about, which is the generation of West Indian kids whose parents moved to the States or to Toronto or to New York and left them in the islands to be raised by whomever was left behind. And, both my parents, were that, like they weren't really raised by their parents until they were like in their teens, so there's ways that they have all that childhood trauma where I'm like, y'all, who raised y'all? Oh, nobody. Oh, auntie? Oh, your grandparents, maybe, But like, yeah, so it's sort of, I think so how this lives into my storytelling is a couple of ways, like dialect. Like, I think from a young age, I knew that my mom spoke like a Trini, my dad spoke like a Crucian, and that's not even how Crucians would speak. Crucians is like Crucian, Crucian. Like that there's a difference to the islands. Like as much as like, I think there'd be this kind of, this Jamaican, like everybody was Jamaican growing up. If they were Caribbean, they were Jamaican, right? But to have a Trini mom and a Crucian father, and that they have a sense of how they think both of each other, something is wrong with the other island. It's like something's wrong with y'all Trinidad, something's wrong with y'all Crucians, you know? But somehow they ended up together. And that I was a Yankee, you know what I mean? That I was born here, that like me as an American kid, I ain't understand this, that, and the other. And that all of the Black kids were like from Chicago. And I just wanted to be from Chicago. That's all I wanted. Because then I would fit in. My parents wouldn't have me looking all like West Indian and from the thrift store and from Marshalls and all, you know what I mean? Like there was just ways that my Caribbean identity wasn't like my friends, like my best friend, he's from Queens, right? So he was surrounded by West Indians, you know what I mean? Like, but me being from Minnesota, being West Indian, I felt like an anomaly, you know? So actually moving to New York was an opportunity for me to be like, oh, be connected with the Caribbean diaspora in a way. So anyways, I think like back to my book, like I think my characters are navigating that multi-diaspora lineage, you know, because I think that there's a lot of like my Brooklyn friends who are just straight Black American, but they like, I'm basically Jamaican, you know what I'm saying? I'm from, you know, you know, like just the ways that our diaspora is not as, what's the word? Compartmentalized. Like I think there's a lot of ways where it's like, oh, we're Black Americans and oh, we're Caribbean and oh, we're from the continent and all of that stuff is very like those provincial aspects are very real. And I think there's so much ways that we are constantly borderless, that we as people, like when I'm in the Caribbean, I feel like I'm in the South. When I'm in the South, I feel like I'm in the islands. When I'm in Brooklyn, I feel like I'm in Trinity. You know, like there's just so much like limitlessness we hold within geography and within our embodiments and our, you know, diaspora and dialects. So yeah, so when I write, I definitely like to have my characters sound like the story of who they are, you know, and where they're from. So yeah, so that's kind of my, you know, kind of answer. But well, tell me about the island ancestry on this call. Like where y'all connected?
So my family is from Barbados on both sides.
Okay, Bayesian in the house.
That's me.
And I am Jamaican, as you can see in this lovely background behind me, which does not look like the Jamaica that I know, but I just really like the background.
You wanted the vibe of the weather. You wanted the vibe of Jamaica.
Yeah.
Honey.
No, it is necessary.
Yes. I love what you said about just like Blackness. I think always transcending borders and space and time in so many ways. And the other thing I love about like your work and the way you speak, even just on this call, is that I feel that same like limitlessness across like generations of especially like Black feminists, artists, writers, thinkers. Like, yes, you're very, very much in the lineage of the bad bitches who were banned with you, like very much. Yes. And I hear you mentioning like your mentor, Alexis DeVoe. And like, I want to know who else are you really like speaking to, mentors, ancestors, or speaking with in your work and as you move through the world?
Yeah, like I definitely think June Jordan is one that like I love. I think because she's so about love, so about and love as a practice of revolutionary inspiration, you know, that we can't just love, but we have to activate our radical and our energy towards transformation and change for each other. And Alexis DeVoe and actually June Jordan were friends, you know, and June Jordan and I have the same birthday, and also she's of Caribbean heritage. So there's a lot of ways that I love kind of tracking queer Caribbeanness, you know, because I think so many ways we're told that, oh, you know, we're not queer, we're not gay. If you're gay, it's because you're confused and, you know, what have you. Like we're taught that we don't exist. And if we do exist, we're an anomaly and we're confused. So to get to, you know, witness June Jordan's work and seeing the kinds of passion and kind of lyricalness, like I think there's an aspect of like, you know, Caribbean writing that really is like playful with language. I think that's Black diaspora language, period. Like, you know, wherever we are, whether it's the South, whether it's Harlem, or like there's ways that we just play with our words, with our sayings, with, you know, what have you, like, you know, oh, it couldn't have been me. You know, like there's just certain, you know, euphemisms and whatnot. You know, Lucille Clifton is also somebody who I love, who I feel is such a witchy conjurer, playful, juicy. I love juicy ancestors. I think I don't know, like it's interesting. Speaking of juicy ancestors, it's kind of like a person whose music I listen to. Like I listen to a lot of Marvin Gaye, and I'm not a singer, I'm not a musician or what have you. I mean, I have musical, you know, artistry and stuff like from growing up and whatnot, but anyways, just like really feeling all of that emotion and that like eroticism through falsetto and sensuality, and I think Black complexity. I think like I was thinking about I mean, obviously Black blues women, you know, like I think about also like Black calypsonians, femme calypsonians. I'm thinking of all of these sort of Black women through time and space, especially through the experience of enslavement, have been able to maintain conversations with sexual agency and radical resistance. So yeah, like I feel that as a writer and as a creative, I very much identify with witchy, runaway witchy type of energy, sensual energy, people who want to it up and heal it up. And yeah, and like pleasure forward things, you know, like definitely even the book I'm writing right now is very much about, you know, it's a young adult novel again, but it's very much lives in the 90s, which has a different kind of, I don't know, like that 90s queer adolescent energy hit different. You know what I'm saying? So that's, you know, I guess what I'm channeling, even referencing all these people.
These people's work and just like the love and expansiveness that's in it, like it doesn't try to be to itself. It always wants to like speak to us and make connections. And it's interesting when other people think it's trying to do the opposite. And I feel so much love and connection and lineage and community from just what these people put into the world, what people like you, what Alexis puts into the world, what June Jordan put into the world. Yeah.
Ashe.
Well, Lee mentioned your upcoming project. And so I would love to know more about that and what you're working on and what's coming up.
Yay! Okay, cool. I'm glad you asked. Because I am really in love with my new project. It's called Black Circus. And it's all 90s Black queer, you know, intensity, juicy angst. And yeah, it's about a young Black woman who sort of is trying to find herself through these, you know, different circles of Blackness in Minneapolis, while dealing with her parents and their fallout over her dad having kids with this white lady and leaving her mom, and which is a very Minneapolis narrative. And but then she finds this group of kind of multi-generational Black queer folks, one of which is this Black elder who's a former circus artist who takes this young woman under her wing. And there's this other subplot that talks about an old school Black circus. This is a Black circus that's fictional, but its origin story is based off of true events. So it's this underground Black kind of magical queer circus that was started after a lynching in Duluth, Minnesota. So there was an actual lynching in Duluth, Minnesota in 1920 that was literally 100 years before George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis. So this lynching happened of 3 Black men who were laborers who were traveling with the circus. And they were accused of rape, you know, falsely accused. And, you know, of course I believe the victim, but like there was evidence that she was actually lying on this group of Black men, you know, and they just picked 3 Black men and lynched them. And it's like there's this kind of dichotomy in, you know, sort of, I'm from Minnesota, I'm from the Midwest. There's this way that we like to be like, oh, the South is where people are racist. The North is where people are, you know, where people went to get freedom. We gave these people their freedom, you heard? And I feel like as a Black Midwesterner, I have witnessed so much racism, so much ways that people try to evade actual accountability and curiosity and about the impact of race in, you know, Black lives and the way that anti-Blackness exists in Minneapolis. I think particularly because there's so much like, there were so many interracial relationships and mixed kids like when I was growing up. So that's been an interesting thing to write about, is the ways that, you know, like I grew up in a time where to be like light and essentially not Black, you know, was what was desired when it came to femmes. And I felt very like ugly. I felt very invisible. I felt very not desired. And I ended up moving to New York in my early 20s and really got a whole different experience of feeling beautiful, of feeling seen and desired. And I realized like I just had such a complex growing up in Minneapolis around not being worthy and beautiful and all these things. And so this book has been interesting in me really addressing that conversation, because I think that there's a way that when Black femmes who aren't mixed or who aren't light, or even those who are light who talk about colorism, I think there's this way that people don't want to have that conversation, or they feel like it's divisive or what have you. But, you know, when I think of all of these families, like, you know, my dad, he had, you know, this is based off of, partly based off of my life, you know. I'm like, Mama, you may not want to read this book because you might want to sue me. Some story little embellishments I put in there. But like, yeah, you know, my dad, when I was 8 and 9, had like 2 kids with a white woman, my 2 younger brother and sister. And, you know, I just remember at that time when he had that family, he was just kind of being with that family more. You know, I mean, these are my siblings, obviously, but he was taking my brother and sister to go hang out with his brother. Like my cousins watch my younger siblings. It felt like my dad had like, you know, moved on up, you know? And I think there is this thing around how I absorbed and made meaning of that. That is a thing that I'm still unpacking, you know? And I think that there's a lot of Black femmes I talk to from Minneapolis in particular who talk about this feeling of like, and I don't think it's just Minneapolis Black femmes, you know, or Black, or it doesn't even have to be femmes. It could be a lot of us, you know, who were not given a reflection of how beautiful and sexy and desirable and gorgeous we are. I grew up in a city where I don't think like Black people loved ourselves in a certain kind of way that I really do get curious about, you know, and how like as a young person, and this exists in the book too, the places I actually did find like a sense of self-worth were like these Black conscious spaces, these like quote unquote would be considered hotep spaces. But them hotep spaces, yeah, they was homophobic. Yeah, they was femphobic. They was all those things. But in Minneapolis in the 90s, it was the one place where it was like queen, sister, you know? So that's also kind of a thing I'm exploring, is like these Black enclaves that kind of have been flattened. Like I do think there's genuine critique to be had with like, you know, some of these Black consciousness folks. But I also think there was a lot of wisdom and a lot of affirmation that like also existed in these spaces that I found. So talking about all of that complexity, you know, is this book. It literally is a Black circus, you know? So yeah.
Wow. That sounds incredible. And so I'm looking at the clock. I wish we could have this conversation all afternoon. I could sit here and listen to you talk about your work all afternoon. But where can people find you? Where can people find more news and information about Black Circus and all of your other incredible work?
Yeah, so I'm currently on Instagram at Junauda. I also have a Patreon that I'm about to drop real soon, like in the next week. And I'm going to be blogging from there. And that's going to be more where I'm going to be keeping my work moving forward besides my published work. My books are both at wherever fine books are sold. That's what I say. Wherever fine books are sold. Yeah, so I love a good independent bookstore. I love a good Black-owned, feminist-owned, radical-owned bookstore. So any of those in your community, big them up. But yeah, your library have my book. I also started a consulting business recently for creatives and just like thinkers and makers or businesses, whatever, called EBT, Creative Consulting. And EBT stands for Explorative Black Tarot. So yeah, that's been like my way of helping creatives do, what they're here to do, which is make magical healing things. And I also teach a lot of creative classes out of embodied astrology, which is sort of, where I teach about the intersections of creative practice and astrological practice. So yeah, that's like, go to junauda.com, holla at me. Have me speak in your school, snuggle me, think about me, write about me.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody go check out junauda.com. We'll put links to all of that stuff in the show notes, and run Junauda some coins, please. That would be amazing. Year of tenderness. But Junauda, thank you so much for joining us today. And this was such an honor to speak with you and to have such a juicy conversation.
Truly. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all are the best. And
we will be right back with the morning announcements with our good friend, Emilia Mettenbrink.
Hello, classmates. My name is Emilia Mettenbrink. I am a violinist and performer with a passion for collaboration and creativity in the arts. Each episode, I will be bringing you the morning announcements. This will be a short list of events and experiences, both live and virtual, that we think are cool and maybe you should check out. This week, if you've been turned on by the conversation with Junauda Petrus and you're inspired to seek out some more literary arts and artists pushing bold topics of conversation, here are a few suggestions from art class happening in New York City and virtually within the next 2 weeks. Lincoln Center's inaugural poet-in-residence, Mahogany L. Brown, continues her Scene, Sound, Scribe series, curating thought-provoking and often politically driven evenings of spoken word, spirited conversation, and presentations of new work. The January 20th iteration of the series features recitation and interviews with the poet and NEA fellow Nicole Seeley, who will discuss her latest collection, The Ferguson Report and Erasure, followed by poet Oliver de la Paz, who will be reading from his National Book Award long-listed collection, The Diaspora Sonnets. DJ Jive Poetic will be bringing the jams throughout the evening. This event takes place January 20th at 7:30 p.m. in the David Rubenstein Atrium. Next, join Peabody and Emmy award-winning correspondent at NBC News, Antonia Hilton, for the launch of her new book, Madness: Race and Insanity in a Jim Crow Asylum. Joining Antonia in conversation is fellow award-winning NBC News anchor and co-host of the third hour of Today, Craig Melvin. This event will be hosted by the Strand Bookstore, January 25th at 7 p.m. Finally, New York Public Library presents Spectral Evidence, Gregory Pardlow with Amani Perry in conversation. This is an in-person and live-streamed event. Spectral Evidence is Gregory Pardlow's first major collection of poetry after winning the Pulitzer Prize for his poetry book titled Digest. This new collection compels us to consider how we think about devotion, beauty, arts, justice, the criminalization and death of Black bodies, and how these have been inscribed into our present, our history, and the Western canon. He will discuss his book with Professor Imani Perry. This event takes place January 30th, 6 p.m. at the Stephen A. Schwartzman Building, or you can find it online at the New York Public Library YouTube channel. If you'd like more information on any of these events, check out the links in the show notes. I'll be back next time with more cool live art for you to experience. Bye, friends.
And we're back for our first ever career day. We have a wonderful guest with us this afternoon. Guest, what is your name?
Hi, my name is Nathan Horowitz.
And where are you located?
I live in Los Angeles.
What's your current job?
I work as a Hollywood stuntman.
Oh, what do you do in this line of work?
Mostly fighting and falling over and getting thrown around a lot.
How long have you been doing this?
I, funny enough, just got a Google update from my first training video 6 years ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've lived in LA going on 4 years now and had a couple of years of experience in Chicago before moving out here.
Oh, so how did you train for it and for how long?
How long is an interesting question because I grew up playing make-believe with my friends and pretending that we were Naruto characters running around and fighting each other and coming up with their own stories. So if you count that as training, then maybe the majority of my life. But I started studying martial arts when I was young. My parents were both martial artists. My mom taught in the US and in Israel. And then I went to school. I went to college in Chicago for acting and stage combat at Columbia College, Chicago, and went through their program, spent the whole 4 years there, graduated, and then moved out to LA to focus a little bit more on screen fighting. And I've been here for 3 going on 4 years, specifically focusing on just stunt work.
That is awesome. And can you talk a little bit about how you studied it in school? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I would wake up, I would go to improv, then I would go to math, and then I would dash across campus to pick up swords and sling some steel for an hour and a half. We studied Shakespeare and sword fighting and unarmed combat. I was very lucky to have incredible teachers and peers, and I tested at the top of my class while I was there. I became a teaching assistant for a couple of semesters while I was there and learned the different styles for the different weapons and then put my own flair into it.
So could you say a little bit about what a day in the life of a Hollywood stunt person looks like?
Well, right now it's waking up at 4:50 in the morning to drive an hour away, train from 6 a.m. till 9 a.m., sometimes till 12 p.m., come home, eat, go lift weights at the gym to make sure I'm staying in shape, and then rinse and repeat the next day. But training sessions differ a lot, and they also differ a lot from what the actual job is while you're on set. A day on set can vary from taking a single reaction, one fall, helping people move mats, helping teach actors, to maybe you're on set for 6 months, you're part of a core team, you're building the choreography, you're working with the fight coordinator and the stunt coordinator who are working with the director to completely create the vision for the action.
So what kinds of misconceptions do people have about your job?
I think people assume it doesn't hurt. It does to a certain extent. We can diminish the possibility for injury and we can diminish the risk, but we can't completely take it out of the equation, but that's why we train so often and so rigorously. so that we can be safe and perform well while we're on set. Usually when I tell people that I do stunts, they're like, do a flip. And I'm like, pay me money. But, so not every stuntman does tricking. Not every man fights, or, not everyone drives. Not everyone does fire or rigging. Everyone's a little bit different. And you are always pulling and learning from different individuals.
So, do you have any upcoming projects or other endeavors that you'd like to share with our classmates?
Can't talk about projects necessarily. I am working on my acting chops. So I am both writing and producing, directing, and acting in a short film this upcoming spring, which is very exciting. So hopefully you can tear me apart on that and tell me how I did. I'll send it over to you and get your feedback.
You know me so well.
Yeah. But I think it's really important that stuntmen can also act, because we are actors, right? Yeah. We just don't always get paid to say lines. But if you can both act and, be a really good stuntman, it just makes you more marketable, which I think is important, especially moving forward in this industry. And outside of stunts and doing my best to say things and get paid to do so, I work as a personal trainer, run an online business, and connect with people, have had the pleasure of connecting with people across the globe and across the United States to help them with their health and fitness. It's called Stronger by Stunts. I don't make people do stunts, but later down the line, I would like to gear it towards actors and stuntmen to make sure that we are healthy and strong and can deliver the most pristine performance possible. But right now, I'm open to training everyone.
That's a beautiful thing, because who amongst us doesn't need training? But Nathan, super excited about everything you've shared. This sounds absolutely amazing. Can't wait to check out the film. But before I let you go, I'm so curious. Could you share with us why your line of work should not be replaced by AI?
Man, I don't think any line of work should be replaced. Me specifically. Wow. I think when we talk about the nuance of character choices and performance, whether it be in theater and acting and music and writing, there are only certain corrections and insights that people have. And that's from us gaining experience. So yes, AI is a wonderful tool that can learn in time, but it's never going to be able to make the same choices that we make, right? It'll never have that human touch to it. It can make our lives easier when necessary, but it can't completely replace us.
I watched every episode of Westworld, so I really hope you're right about that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Nathan. This was a wonderful conversation. And next up, we've got Pure Black Joy.
All right, we are back, and it is time for our last segment of the show before we all let you go, before that final bell rings. So this is a tradition that we carried over from the score, and we just like to end the show on just a note of joy, because there is so much nonsense and insanity happening in the world that no matter, what topics we're talking about, it's really important to end the show just on a note of joy, because, especially like in the work that I do, if there's no joy, if we can't point out those moments of joy, what is the point of doing all of this? And so we call this segment Pure Black Joy, or PB&J, a little snack for your soul. And so, maybe all of us collectively have a moment of pure Black joy, or individually we all have a moment of pure Black joy. But I think this week we're going to do individual. So, Lee, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, my pure Black joy this week is right on theme. It comes to us from a really wonderful writer and educator right here in New York City, Cleaver Cruz, a Black queer Dominican American writer and educator, has a brand new book out, just came out December 19th. It is called The Black Joy Project, and it focuses on sharing moments of pure, unadulterated, visual Black joy from around the globe, over 100 images that capture the ways that we as Black people thrive in the face of systemic oppression, and how that joy remains an essential act of our resistance and a source of our resilience. So go out and get you a copy. It is available, in the words of Junauda Petrus, everywhere fine books are sold. And go out and get you one of these visual love letters to how it is that Black people thrive all over the world.
Yes,
Sounds
absolutely. Yes. Well, somebody understood the assignment this week.
Teacher's pet.
Right. Well, mine is also, literary related. I did the homework to the best of my abilities. Some of you may be familiar with the young adult novel series Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi.
Yes.
And I loved the book. I loved it for my younger self, who just loved anything fantasy related, and to have it be Black focused. But now my older self loves it because it represents some Black spiritual traditions, the Orisha tradition that is, from stemming in Nigeria, but honored by Black folks all over the diaspora now, especially in places like Brazil, Cuba, here in the US too. And I'm a practitioner at African traditional religions. So to have a young adult book that represents those traditions and is out there is wonderful. But it's, in case you didn't know, in case you love the book like me but didn't know, there is a movie coming out. It has been, in the works. In fact, I believe Homegirl has a deal for both the books to be adapted into movies already. But the first one is on the way, and it was just announced that Gina Prince Bythewood would be the director.
Okay.
Yes, I am so excited. So if you are not familiar with her work, she worked on The Woman King, was at the helm of that project. Shout out to The Woman King. Justice for The Woman King, still to this day. We all know did not get the attention it deserved. Also Secret Life of Bees, the Black classic Love and Basketball. So Children of Blood and Bone is just such an epic story, and Gina Prince Bythewood's work is just already, I think, fabulous, and clearly made it into the Black classic film collection. So I know this is set to be epic, and I'm very, very excited.
Yay.
I did not know you were a fan of the series, Paige. The third book in the series is coming out this spring or this summer, so I'm super excited about it. Didn't know about the movie. This changes everything.
Well, I guess it's my turn. Well, in typical fashion, if anybody knew me as a student, I was the king of doing my homework right before it was supposed to be turned in. So, but I don't know if mine is super on theme necessarily, but at the risk of sort of sounding like Lady Gaga and her whole 100 people in a room story. Mine is just really that we get to do this, and we get to be together every couple of weeks and catch up and, bring the arts and arts education to all these people, and especially at an institution like Lincoln Center. I went to college in New York City, and whenever I was lonely or I was sad or, whatever, I would go down to that Tower Records that was at 66th and Broadway. And I was too poor to actually be able to buy any CDs or anything. So I would just sit in the listening or stand at the listening station and listen to music and just sort of look over at Lincoln Center and be like, someday, maybe, hopefully. And, it took me 20 years, but we're here and we made it and we're doing it. And it's so exciting to be able to do this show for such an amazing organization and to do it with the two of you. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just kind of amazing. It just kind of blows my mind. So that just makes me really happy. And yeah, I hope it makes you really happy too. Nobody said yes, but okay. Well, that brings us to the end of the show, and we just want to thank all of you out there for joining us for our first episode of Art Class. Like I said, this is a dream come true, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. And I don't know, Paige, do you want to give a little bit of a little tease? A reality Von tease?
Sure. So one of the things you'll be hearing about throughout the season and starting next episode is Black folks and folk music. What is our connection to it? If you don't think of us as connected to it, why is that? But for real, getting into the roots, getting into actually its connections, in case you didn't know, to our family across the African diaspora and to our root on the continent as well, and just how that has evolved through the years. We'll talk to folks about history, but also folks who are currently performing folk music, documenting Black folks' relationship to it specifically, and how they're showing other Black folks how to preserve that part of our cultural heritage. So I'm very excited.
Yes. We're all very excited. Can't wait to hear that. And I think that's it. I think that's all we got, unless I'm forgetting anything. Any words of wisdom, y'all, before we leave? Oh, I have one.
Oh, you do? Oh, awesome.
Subscribe to Art Class, please, wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. It'll make your life better.
I agree. That would be very wise.
Yes, incredibly wise. All right. So that's it. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks, Paige. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And thanks to me and to Lincoln Center and everyone who helps us put the show together. We'll see you later. Be easy, everybody.
Class dismissed.
Class dismissed.
Class dismissed.
That's it. Good job. Class dismissed. Thank you so much for checking out Lincoln Center's Art Class. The show is hosted by Lee Bynum, Paige Reynolds, aka Mabole Inawale, and me, Rocky Jones. The show is produced and edited by yours truly. Our artwork is by Pat Morin, and our music is Dope Skeletons by Frequently Asked Music. If you enjoyed what you heard, you can really help us out by telling all of your people about the show, subscribing on your podcast platform of choice, and yes, leaving us a positive review wherever you're listening, but especially on Apple Podcasts. It's a small act, but it really, really helps us out, and we just might read your review on air. If you'd like to learn more about the show, please visit the Art Class page at lincolncenter.org, follow all of Lincoln Center's various social media profiles, and feel free to reach out to us anytime at artclasspod@gmail.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, class is dismissed.